Hey listeners, before we dive into today's episode, just letting you know, this was a live stream I recorded in the Flipchart Facebook group. And I was thinking about, should I edit things out or should I let it go? And what I've done is I've just trimmed the beginning and the end of it, but I haven't edited the live stream. And the reason I haven't edited it is because you might want to do a live stream one day and you're curious, how does it work? How much interaction should you have? I'm not the expert here, but I wanted to share how I engage with people, how I tried to keep things on track, yet also responding to questions and comments that were coming through on the chat. So hopefully you find it helpful from a meta perspective and what live streaming might look like for you, and the content as well. I hope you find that applicable in your facilitation world. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the First Time Facilitator Podcast. Whether you're a first-time facilitator or a seasoned pro, listen in for tips and tricks to make a bigger impact at the next workshop you deliver. And now, your host, Leanne Hughes.
Welcome to the First Time Facilitator Podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Hughes, and I'm here to help you create unpredictable workshop experiences that predictably work. Now, on the show last week, we had Deborah Zahn from the Craft of Consulting. As you know, with First Time Facilitator, it doesn't just focus on the craft of facilitation. I love bringing in experts that talk about building business because I'm recently out of corporate life, 18 months in as a solopreneur, and there's a lot of lessons that you can learn to hopefully accelerate your journey if you want to take this career path as a facilitator. So I had a few amazing guests on previously. Warren James, another guest, he lives in Brisbane, has released a book. So I thought it was time for a solo episode. And to be honest, I have just been getting so much energy from our Facebook group called the Flipchart. And if you're wondering what that is, and if you're wondering and listening in and thinking, Leanne's audio sounds a little bit different today, that's because I'm giving love back to the Facebook group and I'm recording this in Facebook Live on the Flipchart. So we've got Flipchart is here interacting with the content. This is a live recording, very different to my other solo episodes where I do write bullet points and I do pause and I do hit stop when I stuff up. You won't see that today. I'll have to keep going. The show must go on. Or as Kiel Lutz would say in a previous podcast, the show must go online. Isn't that the best name for a workshop? Okay, so this show is sponsored by our new program called Virtually Possible 2.0. You've got a few more days to enroll in that. Head on over to join.virtuallypossible.co or simply virtuallypossible.co and you'll grab the details there. That is the last one we're running for the year. Get in while you can before doors close. And anything mentioned in this episode, as well as a recording, and you might need to have a peek at the recording because I'm sharing a few interesting images and screenshots and questions. You can view the video for that as well in the show notes for this one over at firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 143. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Now, like I said, this is going to be a bit of some prompts of what I'm sharing, but also if you've got questions and comments when you're watching in live, just write them in and I'd love to either myself, I'll have a go at answering it, or you've got over 1,100 facilitators from around the world who can help you as well. And that's the beauty of this group. Okay, so what I'd love to share with you, and I apologize for Gay is having to leave. She's being hijacked by dinner duties. Yeah, you're an hour ahead. So it's 5 p.m. Friday as we record, and I've got a glass of bubbles with me to make it even more fun. What we're talking about today is a few questions that came up in the groups. The first one was from Preena. She was a previous guest on the show, and I'll share her question in a moment about group coaching and how to design that around a leadership program. The second topic I'd love to discuss is hybrid sessions. This is what I mean by keeping the topics current. So not a couple of months ago, probably 4 weeks ago, I was running a workshop where we had people in Brisbane face-to-face. We had people in Perth that were in an office room face-to-face, and we had to dial in. So it was like a hybrid session. What made it even more hybrid that I didn't know beforehand, but the client revealed to me on the day, was that we also had 2 people from Brisbane dialing in from their homes. So it really was this mess, but it worked well, and I'll share my strategies on how that worked. And the third one is how to say goodbye when you're leaving your virtual sessions. That came up from Paul. Really great question. And of course, if you've got questions as you join us live, let us know. Always time for bubbles. Absolutely. Yuri? All right. So question one, and I'll just take a moment to grab a drink while we reflect on this question here. So for those of you listening in, I'll read the question out for you that came through from Prina. So Prina said, help needed. Does anyone have a layout ideas for a face-to-face group coaching session? My client will be delivering the leadership development modules, and I will follow with group coaching to reinforce the learning. All help, tips, ideas, muchos appreciated. Now, Prina, you've got 7 comments there from, I think, Catherine and Leanne all wrote back some awesome ideas on things that you can do. And I just wanted to add to that. So first of all, can we just say it's amazing that the client is looking at embedding the leadership modules? Because what we usually see, and I shouldn't brand it all for every client, but it's usually a workshop and it's a one and done thing, right? So you run a workshop and then you're out and then nothing ever happens. So I love that you're being brought in to embed the learning. So how can you do that? Now, in her thread, she mentioned a few constraints or just conditions around this. So the first one is she's got about 10 leaders in each session. Each session runs for about 1.5 hours. These leaders, they aren't in the same team. So they could be from a cross section of the business coming together, which means, when you think about that, it's like, okay, so how safe are they in sharing information? How quickly can you build that up in the 1.5 hour session? And then she's got all these sessions running after one after another, I think 12 sessions in total. So the first thing I would do, and if you're tuning in, how would you design for this? Are there any things that you'd consider when running an embedding type of situation like this? Let us know into chat what you would do. When I read this, I was like, and some of the ideas already popped up in the comments. But when we look at embedding, the first thing I would do is PowerPoint is out, Flipcharts are in, and I would talk to the client about the key models that were covered in that program. Then what I would do, and this is an awesome Tim Pence strategy. Oh, Ken, you've lost sound. Hopefully it's not my microphone. If it is, if anyone else has lost sound, just let me know and I can switch microphones. Because it's a podcast, we need audio. What I have done in the past is I've actually just drawn all the models up, the key models, one flip chart for each model, posted them around the room. What that does is then you can start forming connections between different models. They're all there, right? As opposed to PowerPoint, where it is, you click and then you click to another slide and it's gone. So flip charts all around the room with the key models. Hopefully there aren't too many models. That's the other thing I see crammed into workshops is model, like 15 minutes to throw a model in, let's throw another one in. So hopefully that's not the case, Prina. The good thing about leaders in organizations is they've all got challenges. Everyone's got a challenge. Everyone likes to share their war story. One thing, I don't even know what this is called. I'm sure there's a clever name for it. And do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that ticker off the screen. It's called a crawler, but it can be distracting. I think you got the message. So what you can do is you set mini groups up, so huddles, and you prep people beforehand and you say, look, consider what's happened in your role since doing the leadership program. What problems have you got as a leader? What have you encountered? What would you like to share? And you use this as like a collective brains trust. So what I'd suggest is getting people into groups, and you do this with really robust timings. This could also be done virtually as well. If you got a group of 4, one person goes first and they've got 2 or 3 minutes to share their problem. Like, I'm working with someone that just doesn't respect me. These are some incidents that happened, and you tell the story. You're given 3 minutes to tell the story and provide the details. Then you stop, you get the story out, have a bit of a break. And then the 3 people in the group, they then have 3 minutes to ask you questions. So you've just got to respond. And you can adjust the timing depending on how it works for you. wait for that to respond, and then you respond to them, and then stop the time. While they're asking questions, they might be thinking of solutions. And then in the third 3 minutes, or however long you want to run this for, the group then fires suggestions at you. And all you can do then is sit there and go, thank you. So you can't go, I've tried that, but you just go, thank you, thank you. And then at the end of that session, that mini huddle, you ask that leader, okay, out of all the responses that were given to you and advice, which one was most useful for you? Which one will you run with? Yeah, so that's really basic. Yuri, 2 to 3 minutes of nonstop talking so they don't overthink and overcensor. Yeah, that's right. I think you're right about constraints, and the leaner you can go, the more organic it will be. And you can bring in things like that, the Tibetan bells. I've got them in my facilitation pack. The Tibetan bells, I'm just going to hide Prina's. Yeah, the Tibetan bells to call time. If you're doing it virtually, there's also a website called Time Blocks, and you can have a timer on the screen. Of course, they might be in breakout rooms, so you can also just send time notifications through that. You're talking about the problem? Yep, exactly. So what he wrote there was 2 to 3 minutes to talk about the problem, to let it all out. But so the prep's really important here. So I would suggest getting to think about that story before they come in. Prina, you've only got an hour and a half, so it's going to be quite quick and you want to prep them as much as they can. Also recognizing that people don't do prep work. So build that into your plans. So the flip chart, that, and the other cool activity I've seen done, we did this in mining. It was based on a TV series called Hypothetical, an ABC TV series. And what they do is they have all these different case studies, and you go around a circle. So you might have the 10 people sitting in a circle. This is a face-to-face workshop we're talking about. And you have a series of ethical dilemmas that happen. Now, in your case, Prina, it could be leadership problems. So you might see, and it depends on what your focus is on and what models you want to explore. Things that we've used in the past have been, you know that your manager is sponsoring the local sporting club because his son works there, or there might be a conflict of interest. What do you do? What do you do next? And what you do is you go around and that the next person answers that, and then you have a discussion around it. Then you throw out a new problem. And it's kind of like, it takes some work to draft out the hypothetical, but it is so great because you take real examples of what's going on with the client. And so get those stories, craft it into something, and then watch the debate and the conversation unravel. And your role as facilitator then is try to squeeze in, using the flip charts that are around the room, what models would link in to support you communicating that, or providing feedback, or working with conflict, or communication styles. So it's really, really kind of fun. It's dramatic and something a little bit different. So check out the TV series. It's called Hypothetical. I'm sure it's on YouTube, and you can see what I mean. But the skill there is crafting the story. So Prina, that's my tips for you, and I'm sure you'll get some more ideas back in the flip chart. Now, the second, welcome. First of all, if you're joining us live, welcome. We're recording episode 143 of the First Time Facilitator podcast live. I've got a few prompts here, but if you've got any questions or comments, I'm interacting with you. So this is not an evergreen podcast. Just let me know. When I spoke about prep work, Yuri said, because people don't do prep work, spend your first X minutes when you have them there to just do that. Love that. So that could be a great icebreaker. It's like, turn to the person next to you. What's happened in the last month that's been amazing that you want to celebrate? I always like starting with a positive question. And then what's something that's been a bit of a challenge with your team that you'd love to walk out having solved today? A couple of questions like that gets people talking, gets them primed into that activity. Great idea. I've done hypotheticals, they work well, and people at all levels enjoy them, especially if the answers are not obvious. Thanks, Ken. I agree. It's like, just reminds me of those choose your own adventure novels when you're a kid. It's like it could go anywhere, and you really get great discussion out of it. When people say, I'll do this, it also reflects their values. It leads into values conversations. So, yeah. And I don't, to be honest, I haven't seen them done that often. Yeah. So when I went to the mining company, it was just there. My boss, Daryl Cox. G'day, Daryl, if you're ever listening or watching. He just threw this hypothetical that had been crafted, and I was reading it going, this is the coolest thing. So yeah, and the drama plays out. It's cool. So the second The second topic I'd love to explore, if you don't have any questions or comments, is the hybrid session. Now, this all depends on, this might be relevant for you, depends on what part of the world that you're in at the moment. I'm lucky enough to be in Brisbane, Queensland, where we're allowed to go out, we're allowed to get into rooms, there's social distancing. So I was running a face-to-face workshop last month, and it did feel weird. It did feel weird, and I felt really kind of giddy with excitement when I was facilitating it. But it wasn't a traditional face-to-face session with just 10 people in the room. We had to dial in another group. We had 2 mining engineers in Perth. And as I arrived to the workshop, I was told that we also had 2 people, individuals dialing in from Brisbane from their own computers. Now, the assumption here is that there's video conference connecting the 2 rooms. There wasn't. There was no video conferencing. So I am lucky. I've got 2 MacBooks, one that just won't die, the one that I'm using at the moment. It's like a Toyota. It just, I mean, I'm glad it won't die, but it's been running since, for 8 years. It's just amazing. And I've got this new one that, yeah, hardly, I feel terrible, but I just want to kill this one first. Anyway, so I got in nice and early. I think it was, the workshop started at 9:30 and I was there at 7:45. Giddy with excitement, first workshop. And I walk in and it's like, crap, no video conferencing, all good. So I had one laptop, and actually we'll share with you in the stream. So if you're listening, I apologize. I'll try to describe it. That's me taking a selfie of the room setup. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but I had my new MacBook up the front of the room, and it's got a wide screen. The camera, I just used the internal camera on that and connected it to the Wi-Fi. So that, if you can see the image on that PowerPoint, you can see that it captured everyone in the room. So it was set up, the space was great. And then I had the laptop that I'm currently using, the Toyota of MacBooks, in front of me, and I had my webcam on it. So then when I dialed into Zoom, I was actually dialing into Zoom on the same account. What that means is sound is weird. You got to put earphones into it. I won't get into too much detail, but just be wary when you dial into Zoom on 2 computers using the same account, there can be some sound issues. So you need like headphones to mute the sound. Okay, so I had that set up. I had the other MacBook facing me. I had a mouse that had Bluetooth. This is sounding really complex. I'll have to draw it out for you, but it ended up working really well. Moral of the story is it worked well. I had my microphone with me. What I would suggest next time, it only has about a 2-meter lead on it, auxiliary cable. I'd get a longer one so we could pass it around the room and get people to talk into that. That was probably the hardest part, not using a room with video conferencing facilities, was sound. And sound is so important. As we know, if you have bad sound, it's very easy to tap out. The computer is like the Terminator. Yeah, and hopefully, touch wood, it won't die after I've just said this. But that was my setup frame in Brisbane. The people dialing in could see me as if I was there. So I'm actually very close. It was my face up to that MacBook. The microphone, the sound was good, and we got people to report back. We would pass the microphone around. I also, if you can see in that image, I had my Boom UE3 Bluetooth speaker. That was on as well. So the sound coming through, if anyone was talking to us in Brisbane, that would pick it up. And yeah, just DIY the hybrid session. Now, the key piece of software that enabled this, so Zoom, it was very helpful, of course. I'll just take a quick breather. And yeah, if you've got questions, I'll send them through. Thanks for joining me today, by the way. Thanks for spending your Friday with me. The key piece of software was something called Nearpod. Nearpod. I was deliberating. I was like, should I use Mentimeter, Slido? Nearpod. It's free. Unbelievable. I'm going to hide my selfie here. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm just showing a screenshot of Nearpod. Free tool. Gosh, it's absolutely incredible. What I will do is actually minimize myself. So I'll add a bit of contrast in. So what I'm doing, if you're listening to the podcast, is I'm just shuffling around images on the screen to create a bit of contrast, because people get really bored with static images on their screen. You have a look at this. So just, if you, honestly, open another tab if you're watching this, head on to nearpod.com, sign up for a free account and just play with it. I created my slides in Google Slides and I imported them in here. And when I was creating the slides, I had gaps. So every 3 or 4 slides, I would have a question or an activity or a poll designed in. Then I imported it in and I recreated those quizzes, polls, features within it. So what I encourage everyone to do, so didn't matter whether you were in Brisbane or Perth or dialing in from home, I asked you to get out your phone or tablet, head to nearpod.com, put in the code and interact with the presentation. And what that means is I'm driving the presentation from my computer. I can share results. They've got a really cool range of activities. One is, I think I wrote, just draw what you're doing on the weekend. So people are drawing things and then you submit it, you see it live on the screen. And the cool thing about that, as opposed to whiteboard and Zoom, is that you can actually see who's drawn what. It says like John's drawn this, and yeah, it's really fun. And it made the session. Nearpod.com, so underrated. Check it out if you're doing hybrid. Has anyone heard of Nearpod? No? Yep, like I said, underrated. All right. So if you are joining us live, we've got 5 of you here live. Let us know. I'm going to have a bit of a breather. So complete this sentence. A great facilitator ... does what? A great facilitator ... Let us know. I've just put the crawler back on the screen for those of you who are just joining us live. I know people come and go all through this. And guess what? That's okay, because you can get the recording live to your podcast app, episode 143 of the First Time Facilitated podcast, coming straight to your podcast app on Monday. Let's see what we've got here. A great facilitator doesn't talk too much. That was the best part of the conversation. Thank you, Ken, for that. When I spoke to Wanda in Madrid, and he was talking about the ratio, that was a big watershed moment for him, was he thought the facilitator had to, it was an 80-20. And he reflected on that. And he said, how much time am I spending talking in these workshops? And when you are on that 80-20 ratio, it is more lecture style. Now, I'm very aware of the irony of this. I'm recording a podcast. You are typing at me. So it's 100% Leanne. Yeah, I've got nothing on that. But yeah, great facilitators absolutely don't talk too much. Let the group take that role. Suzanne, great to have you here. Suzanne's hosted many fun Flipchart events at her beautiful home just south of Brisbane. Great facilitators prepares well in advance. Absolutely. Ask lots of questions to get the info from the group. I'd love to combine those two. Prepares well in advance and asks lots of questions. When we look at preparation, and I don't know if this is, Suzanne, let me know your thoughts, or anyone else that's joining us live. When we look at preparation, it's always the content and the information. I want to link those two topics. You said ask lots of questions. Suzanne, or anyone else joining us, do you actually prepare those questions beforehand as well? Like, oh, this is a controversial question, or this one will create a lot of dialogue. Do you prepare the questions as well? Love to know. And Yuri, a great facilitator knows that every group is different and constantly finds ways to make it work. Every situation is different. And what was the title? Marcus Crowe, the episode I did with him, he said, there is no such thing as a difficult group, only an inflexible facilitator. Mic drop. That was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Love these. Love these. Okay. Now, this one is, I'm not going to be the content expert on this one. I am keen to know your thoughts, because we had some, I do have some thoughts, and because I am the person talking because I'm on a podcast, I'll share them, but I'm keen to know what you think too. Paul asked an amazing question. Paul is over in New Zealand, and he said, when you close up a virtual meeting, do you A, say goodbye, and hit the big old end meeting for everyone button quick smart? Do you B, say goodbye, then let everyone slowly leave the meeting one by one? What do you do in your virtual meetings when you have to end them, when you have to say goodbye? Paul has been doing A, but he feels like a big meanie. Like, no, you can't play anymore because I said so. I totally know how you feel, Paul. So, the first suggestion I would make, and if you are joining us live, please let me know, how are you ending your calls? It does feel a little bit cold, right? It feels like you're just pushing people out the door. That could be an advantage. That could. I love hanging around and talking to people after a workshop. But sometimes, I mean, we've all been, please, like, I'm being human here. We've all been in situations where we're like, okay, I do need to go now. Or is it just me? Maybe it's just me. All right. Suzanne's responded to that. I asked her about the preparing questions. She said, not usually, but instead of making the statement, rephrase it into a question. Awesome. The wisdom is usually in the group and the answers are there. You just need to ask the question. Lovely. That also spurs into the whole question around, what do you do when you ask the question and you're not getting the response? Do you adjust the question? What do you do? These are all the things that come out when you are a first time facilitator, even more seasoned as well. Like, what do you do in that moment? Okay. Ken tried B option. So say goodbye and let everyone slowly leave. It felt a bit weird. Next time I will mention something I'll talk about for another couple of minutes. Yeah, I think that's important. Let's talk about that SCARF model. I always talk about SCARF as an acronym. David Rock, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. Now, booting people out, what are you rewarding? What are you threatening there? Autonomy, perhaps. The autonomy, I want to stay here, I want to discuss. But what about your own autonomy as a facilitator? It's like, well, I've got back-to-back meetings now, I've got to shoot. That's what I consider, because I'm usually that person that's got the back-to-back. What I'm doing now is, if I know I've got a workshop that goes for an hour, I might either reduce the time to like a 53-minute meeting or a 50-minute, because then it's different. And I think people will appreciate that because they also have back-to-back meetings. And I don't think it's very healthy hanging up one meeting and just dumping into the next one, because you haven't moved around. You're bringing that legacy into the other one. So I like giving people that white space, even just in between meetings, because they're no longer moving between rooms. They're literally just sitting there. So I would suggest giving them more space. But if I do have a session where I think, oh, it's an hour, I will actually then book up the next half hour in case. And I don't think, Paul, there is a hard and fast response for A or B. It really depends on the context, what's going on, the people that are involved, how busy are they. Because the other thing, and just from a participant perspective, is I love meetings that finish on time. I love leaving at the time that I was meant to be leaving. So I respect that as a facilitator as well. But if you bring in the autonomy piece, then it's like, okay, I'll give you an option. If you do want to stay longer, there's an opportunity to do that. I remember when COVID first hit and we ran a happy hour. I'm going to add some contrast here and just, there we go, full screen. When we first had COVID hit, and we had the Flipchart happy hour. And it was from 5 till 6, and I think I'd made plans after that. I don't know what the plan was. It was like maybe just roll into the lounge room. But and the conversation was going, but I was like, I'm tired. I've been on Zoom calls all day. And all I did was I made Catherine, who was on the call, I made her a co-host because I wanted to stay longer. So I just gave her my co-host responsibility and I left the meeting. So you got to be a bit careful about that with who you give it to, because you might, again, if you need your account for another meeting, you'll need everyone to go. But I really do think it's what you need to take into control is, okay, if it does go over time, do I have that time to give them? What are some smart strategies of exiting this? So Tom Scantlebury in Virtually Possible, we were meeting in Kubo space, and we're like, oh, it gets awkward when people leave and are like, bye. And so he said, right, we're going to do a race. I'm going to count down from 3, 3, 2, 1. The last person to leave the room is a loser. That was it. And so just like, oh my God. And because there were a few of us that were really competitive. So we're sort of just hanging out on our mouse, ready to exit the room. And yeah, it was really fun. So we just all exited it. Jacinta Cubis, when I was on her workshop, she does that one where you say one thing that you learned and then you pass to someone else and you leave. And then it's like a nice sort of domino effect of people leaving the room. I think that was really nice. Though I wanted to hear what other people had to say. What else is there? Ken is sharing, there's a podcast I listen to that finishes, then adds 5 minutes of extra time where they wrap up with the things I forgot to mention in the main part. Works well. Love that. Cool. That's a really great idea. So you could have maybe a slide or something of your main points that just plays. You might even want to start, you could use the music to play some like Oscars wrap up music, some like piano instrumental, have that really low, then maybe a bit of a crescendo when it's time to leave. You might just have a bit of play with it, have like a countdown clock. This Zoom room will self-destruct in 2 minutes. That might be going on. You might give people a backup room. You might go, hey, here's a link to Kumo Space. If you want to continue the conversation, head over to this tool, or let's meet on another medium. I don't know, but just giving out options here for you. So good. And we also, Yuri introduced the wave of the week, the wow. I'm just going to grab a quick sip here. So what we did was, on our weekly calls, as part of Virtually Possible, we would say, right, what's the wave of the week? And it could be something silly, like it could just be a wave. It could be like the royal wave, or it could be, I don't know, a bit of a dance. Yeah, you can just introduce that, have a bit of fun with it, and give someone accountability when you jump on the call to say, right, Ken, now it's your turn to provide our wave of the week. Give Ken some time. Yuri, maybe have a separate digital place to meet, more casual. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Love this. All right. One more question for you. Actually, what I might do, I've got a question on the agenda, but Murray Guest is a member of the Flipchart. He's been on the podcast 2 or 3 times, and I've got his cards here. These are called the Inspired Conversation cards. And these are great for icebreakers. So question for you, if you're joining us live, is if you could be an animal, which animal would you be and why? Now, if you are listening on the podcast, there is about a 20-second delay when you are live streaming into Facebook. So think of a face-to-face workshop where you'd ask a question, and it's usually about a 5-second delay, right, for people to think about it, and then the extroverts or the Ds on the disc profile or the Is will respond. But it takes a bit longer. If you could be an animal, which animal would you be and why? If we're talking about animals which reflect ourselves, I'd probably be, I've been told, a parrot before by my own father at my 21st birthday, and just talks a bit, hence this podcast, hence why I'm in podcasting and facilitation, or a butterfly, because it's just like flittering around. Yuri would be a Jack Russell Terrier. And why is that? I think we all know. Energetic, restless, playful, and he's written in caps, incredibly smart. Awesome. Okay, and so look, we're going to wrap up this episode. How long have we gone? About 30 minutes. Awesome. It's great timing. So if you are joining us, first of all, Yuri and I released a course this week. It was a free mini course from Zoomtigue to Zoomtastic. If you want to catch up on the videos that we released, so we released tips on things that you can do before, during, and after your workshop. These are in a 3-part video series. You can head on over to virtuallypossible.co/Zoomtastic. That's virtuallypossible.co/Zoomtastic. Doesn't matter when you're listening to this, those videos will be made available for you, so you can see the quick tips that we came up with. One thing that I mentioned, I was watching the after video again today. We just riffed on the spot, honestly. One thing I did mention was, could you create for your workshop, in podcast, we've got show notes, and every episode I'm saying, head on over to firsttimefacilitator.com/episode 143, and you'll find the links to the person I interviewed and all this other stuff. Could you do that for your workshop? So could you say to your group, and pre-prepare this so you don't get exhausted after a workshop? It's the last thing you want to do. Have that email ready to go. This is what we mentioned on the show. This is the workshop. Here are some books I'd recommend. Here's a curated Spotify podcast playlist for you. Here are the contact details of everyone that was there. And there you go. There you go. And if you are keen to join our program, like I said at the beginning of the show, doors close in the next couple of days if you're listening to the podcast. If you're watching this live, we close doors in 6 days, the 22nd of October. Head on over to virtuallypossible.co for all the details there. So can I just say a big, big, big thank you to those of you who have joined us live. I could see Yuri, we had Ken, we had Gay, Suzanne. I could see that coming up. So thank you so much for participating. For those that were watching and didn't interact, that's totally cool. That's what this is for. And this is why I'm actually doing a live stream, is to also give you alternatives for just getting everyone to hop on a Zoom call. I had a really great analogy as I wrap this up. I had a really, really great analogy the other day of when you are going to like watching a keynote speech or going to a workshop, sometimes it's nice just being the observer, sitting back, listening to it all, being in the audience and not being a full participant. And I think what we're seeing a lot these days is we want information transfer, we do want interaction, but we're getting everyone to jump on calls with their video on, with their audio on, and that creates a level of expectation. And I think it's nice sometimes, particularly on a Friday, to just sit back with your headphones on. You could be on the iPad on the couch. You could be anywhere in the world, just watching. You don't even have to end up in chat. You just want to get the information and see what's going on. And I think that's pretty cool too. I think it's a great option. So thank you for joining us live. Suzanne, awesome. Yuri, awesome. Ken, Gay, thank you. Thank you for watching it live. And if you are watching the replay in the Facebook group, the Flipchart, just write replay in the comments and sing out if anything resonated for you. So I would ask you that if you are still here, what's one thing that did stand out for you today? It doesn't have to be something new that you learned, but just like, oh yeah, I remember that. And that's interesting. So share into chat what is one thing that stood out for you today. And if you're listening to this podcast, wherever you are in the future, thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm asking you the same question. What's one thing that really stood out for you today? Suzanne's written, it's tricky dealing with kids and dinner time, but thank goodness for Bluetooth earpiece and the mobile phone to watch you through. Exactly, right? Suzanne could just participate as an observer, but still felt like she was part of it. And that's what I love about live streaming. Yuri, what stood out for him was how to end your sessions. Cool. Glad you got lots of ideas. And Ken, rethinking a forgotten part of an event, the end. Actually, yeah, it's funny, Ken, in my 12 rules for facilitation, that's, I think, oh gosh, what rule was it? Number 8? I should know that. But it is focus on the cool down routine. We all focus on warming up. How much do we spend on designing the beginning? Like, I remember when I was a first-time facilitator, I would have these Word documents of like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and all the activities listed out, scripted at the beginning. And at the end, it was just like, okay, ask a question. I really didn't put the effort into the start. And I think it's all about the ending strong. You know that, Ken, in hospitality, right? You have a really great experience up front, but if you stuff up the bill or you can't split the bill, it leaves a sour taste in your mouth, right? See that alternative way to connect live. You nailed it. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And for those that are listening on the podcast, this is definitely an experiment. Keen to hear your thoughts. This episode was really built for those that joined us live. And hopefully that encourages you to give live streaming a go as a way to facilitate your sessions. They don't all have to be full interactive. So the tool that I'm using now is b.live. You can find it at app.blive.tv. There are amazing tools. We can talk about live streaming in the Flipchart after this. And you know what's really awkward now is that I'm going to have to say goodbye to all of you. So what I might do is end the show officially, and then I'm happy to stick around and have a bit of a chat based on what we spoke about earlier. So if you're listening into the podcast, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to bringing you an interview on the show next week. And as always, if you'd like to join the conversation when the show is over, join our community of over 1,100 facilitators from all over the world talking about facilitation and sharing their ideas as well. Ciao.